hair everywhere. Oh, hello, everyone. I was having a look. I've done it again. I've sort of come out, got straight on the thing, not had a look in the mirror. I've just washed my hair this morning and it's everywhere where it shouldn't be. Just as I'm not vain. I'd be horrified. I hope you're all well and taking care. I sort of tried to get on at 12:30. I had a couple of short interruptions, but I'm close. It is about 12:40 here in Australia. I'm going to draw a card from the Animal Spirit Guidebook. I'm waiting for somebody's name to appear up the top. I'm sure it won't be long. I could have a bet and see if it's Hayley, but then yesterday people's bells didn't go off. So it was like, hang on a second, what's going on? Yeah, I don't know why the bells aren't working. But anyway, all right, so let's read. Scott's on first. Hey, Jess, how are you going? How are you, Scott? And good morning from Perth. Have you got nice weather over there, Jess? It's pouring everywhere here. Hopefully some of the places that need the rain are getting it this morning. I've got my heater going downstairs for the first time this year. I had the guy come out and fix it, like give it a service the other day. So it's working beautifully now. And the fan's not as noisy. He cleaned the fan. He said to me, 5 years, probably a bit long to let the fan go, but it's windy in Perth. Yeah, I would imagine so. Sort of gusty here a little bit too, actually, when I think about it. I'm really good. Who is in second? Jess J was in second. That's like who's on first. All righty. So we're going to read an animal spirit. Hey, Rebecca, how are you going from Montreal? I love this. I love seeing you guys all come in from different parts of the world. It's just awesome, isn't it? We're so lucky that we have that access to everybody. All right, we're going to read a card from the Animal Spirit Guidebook first. Just one, though, this time, I think, because we keep getting more than one. Oh, I have the mouse here. Well, that's really interesting. I'm going to read the mouse, but I've got the bat as well because we've had the mouse before. But I did pull the bat second, so the mouse. Hey. This is about being small-minded. I've been doing a little bit of work on myself today. So I've been watching a little bit today around emotional flashbacks, but we can have that talk one day. The mouse. This is about being detail-oriented, small-minded, nitpicky, or nervous. The mouse has an innate desire to tend to the details. It often spends its day fixing, preparing, organising, and scrutinising. Unfortunately, a mouse personality doesn't notice when they've gone too far. Soon they begin to have a limited and fearful vision of life and try to control every detail. Righty, I know I remember because it came on the day we were talking about control. Okay, this can be quite a painful experience for both the mouse and those around them. When mouse energy is at play, step back for a moment. It may be time to find a more purposeful project to delve into, one that's worthy of your exacting eye. So the positives of the mouse are about being organised, resourceful, and prepared. And I do remember talking about this the other day because we'd been talking about control, and then the mouse came in, and the mouse is about control. It's micromanaging. It's trying to manage the small things to help you feel in control of things. But actually, micromanaging doesn't make you feel any more in control, and it makes other people around you feel very uncomfortable if you're managing everything. So we talked about being able to let go with the flow, and just enjoy your time, your life, your work as it is. There's nothing worse than having someone around you questioning what you're doing and not trusting you to do your job. And I think the other day I was talking about very often the person who's doing the micromanaging feels out of control, or feels perhaps you have more power than them, and it's their way of exerting their power over you. So if you're working with someone who wants to manage your every move, it's because they see you as a threat and they're trying to keep you under control. Interesting, isn't it? I learned that a long time ago. Okay, so let's have a look what the bat says. I haven't read the bat before, so I'm thinking it'll be really interesting to read this one. Okay, so the bat is not an earth animal. It looks like it's air. Okay. Hey. Bat. That's a really cute picture too, isn't it? So the bat is about darkness, letting go. We've done it again. Okay, the bat is about letting go. The mouse is about controlling everything. So we've got polar opposites here, which is really interesting. This is death leading to rebirth. So this is the card of rebirth. So the mouse is telling us that we need to stop trying to control, stop trying to manage everything, let go of control. And we've talked about that a little bit. The bat is about rebirthing, and it's also about letting go. So the control has to go. And this is very much about letting go of the ego as well. All right, let's have a look. Before emerging, the bat waits for the sun to set and the moon to rise. In the darkness, it can see all that was invisible in the daylight hours. The bat is a master of the subtle senses, of the underlying forces that cause some things to prosper and other things to fade. The bat card shows up to signify the ending of a chapter. This is the closing of a cycle, the closing of a door. The bat comes swiftly, encouraging us to move on. In just a few hours, a new day dawns, no more lingering in the past. Okay, so I can see exactly why we've had those messages today, because it's coming out in our readings all the time. There is this desire for us to hold on to what's already gone. There's a desire for us to hang on to the past, whether that's past people, whether it's past feelings, whether it's past experiences, core beliefs. We've talked about all these before. And there's a desire for us to hang on because it feels right for us, because we've experienced it. We want it to stay true with us. So it feels comfortable. It's like an old pair of shoes, an old pair of pajamas, an old jacket. You know, we don't want to throw it out because it feels comfortable. So we tend to hang on to what we feel is part of who we are. And the universe is trying to, hey, Teresa, how you going? The mouse is trying to say to you, you cannot control things. You have to learn you can't control. You can't manage it. So whenever I say that, people sort of question it and go, but you can control this and you can control that. Yep, that's about you having power in your own life. When you're controlling, you're trying to control other people. You're trying to control outcomes. You're trying to control the way you want your life to go. Those things don't happen. You can put out there how you want that to happen, but things unfold as they are supposed to. Recurring theme lately. Yes, Rebecca, the letting go. You were admiring a bird today, enjoying floating in the air. Such a beautiful sense of freedom and letting go. And that's what we keep being asked to do, to go with the flow. I'm trying to do that at the moment. And it is a little difficult sometimes to not hang on to things. Now, my problem is more around hanging on to things, that feelings and emotions that I know I need to let go of. I know that they date back to my childhood, some of the result of, CPTSD, emotional flashbacks, that type of thing, my emotions. So I've been trying to do some work around emotional flashbacks, emotional literacy, emotional intelligence, recognizing your emotions. And we've talked about that too, stopping, observing just for a moment rather than reacting to something. Because when we're in that sort of emotional state, we tend to react before we stop and think about why we're reacting. And I always say to people, if you take a minute and just say to somebody, just hang on a moment, and you take a minute just to step back and have a think about what's going on, then you can respond in a much more empowering way, much more assertively. But if you go straight back at someone when they've said or done something, you're more likely to act out of emotion. Hey, Carla, how you going? And that is what I'm learning to do, because what happens sometimes is something will happen, say at work, family, whatever. Very rarely really with my own children, but I even catch myself doing it with them. And somebody will say something, and instead of stopping for a moment and thinking about it, I immediately react to it. And I'm learning not to do that. Now, I learned to do that in my relationships. I got very good at it. But at work and in my personal life, it creeps up on me sometimes, and I respond too quickly. I'm a little bit passionate, I like to think. So I come straight back at things rather than stopping and thinking about them. And of course, later on, when I stop and think, I think, you foolish person, you've done it again. You've acted straight out of emotion. And I've done it so many times in the past. I've made erratic decisions based on those emotions. I've cut people off, pushed them away, stopped talking to people because I've got angry and responded out of emotion. So I'm learning to work with that at the moment. Yes, it's there's a lot of work to do around your emotional stuff. And this is the sort of stuff when Spirit's talking about letting go of your past. It could be like a past person. It can be your core beliefs, which I think is for a lot of people at the moment, their non-belief in themselves, poverty consciousness. For some of us, it's about our emotional intelligence, our emotional literacy, how we respond to situations, people, whatever. But when you do it in the right way and you go back, because what happens is if you respond that way, you get so heightened, you get so hypervigilant because you've emotionally responded. And sometimes you can't get rid of that emotion. It sits with you and it just keeps going round and round and round. And of course, it's really distressing because you keep reliving that moment, cycling. And then later on, you think, if only I'd said this, if only I had have done that, if only for a moment I would have stopped and thought, that's how I would have responded. So what I'm learning now is you need to stop, think about it, respond. And then it doesn't sit with you because you've answered it in a way that's more akin to how you're feeling. But there's some thinking in that. 3 hours ahead of Auckland. No, I don't think we're 3 hours ahead of Auckland. But anyway, you're here, Gillian. That's the main thing. I'm worried I got chocolate. I've just eaten chocolate. I don't know. I've had more chocolate in the last few weeks than I've ever had. It's the only thing I know I could get in the supermarket. Chocolate's better than toilet paper, right? So I have been learning about emotional stuff. That's where I'm at the moment. And I'm having a lot of fun learning about it. So I sort of took a bit of time out today to listen to some things on, emotional responses. But for other people, yes, it's very much about letting something go. And we all have something we should work on. None of us are perfect, but, we can be the best version of imperfect we want to be, right? So, if you're not sort of revisiting the things you do or having a look at how you respond or, the things you're hanging on to from the past, then in effect, you keep yourself trapped in the past and you don't move forward. So if you're not moving forward, then you're not manifesting and you're not bringing in what you need to bring in to make your life perfect or as perfect as imperfect. But you know what I mean. So the readings this morning were really amazing again, and they have been a lot lately. And a lot of them are about us closing out a cycle. And I think we've been told probably for months now we were close to ending out a cycle. And I think most people are working on some of those things that will help them move forward. And I feel like this is why we've come to a standstill, because so many of us are still living, the lives we were taught or the way we were taught to do things. So we're still sort of living in the shadow of our parents and our ancestors and people that came before us, because we haven't learned or we haven't adapted to be different. And growing up, you wouldn't have challenged that because your parents were just, regardless of whether they were good parents or not good parents, they're icons. They're, something that you're going to listen to regardless, right? Because they're your parents. That's how they do things. So if your parents taught you how to behave or you modeled your behavior on a parent, then it's pretty likely that you haven't got the best resources you could have. So if I look back now, I think my mother had me when I think she fell pregnant about 17. She would have had me about 18 years old. And I think at 18 years old, now as an adult looking back, how good would your resources have been to raise a child? Because really at that age, there's a lot of self-focus, isn't there? It's not really about, what else is going on. A lot of young parents, and I've seen them. I'll give you a really good example. I was working with children. I worked with young people in a refuge for a long time. And one of the girls had come to us. I mean, we had kids who were already sexually active at 8 and 9 years old. So we're working with some pretty traumatized kids. But we had a girl come in and she wanted to have one of those dolls that was like, she wanted a baby. Okay, I think she was about 13, 14 years old. She wanted a baby. And we had a talk amongst us and thought, what a great idea if we purchase one of those dolls that has to be treated like a baby, right? So the baby cries, needs feeding, needs changing, and the child or the girl who's looking after it has to attend to all the needs of that child. And therefore, the hope was that she would understand the demands of a baby, and perhaps it would turn her off becoming a mother. Everything backfires, right? Kids are unpredictable creatures. She came in. They had like recorders in the doll that told us, what had happened, whether the child had been fed, changed, all those sort of things, and within the doll. And as it turned out, she got sick of it crying, and she shut it in the wardrobe for the night because she didn't want to not have any sleep because she was tired. Like, you can't do that with a baby. You can't. But I wonder how many parents do things like that because they can't cope with, a screaming child. And, sometimes if any of you are parents or, many of you probably are, there are times when a baby's crying and you go through all those things. You go through the cuddling, the changing, the feeding, the nursing, you do everything and that baby is still really unsettled. Hey, Gigi, how you going? And the baby's still unsettled. So what do you do? And this ties back to a lot of the stuff around attachment issues. Now, if this child, this girl in the refuge, put her baby in the wardrobe because she couldn't handle it crying, and that baby is screaming in a dark place for a long time, then a child learns that not everything is attended to when it cries, right? So there becomes this sort of gap around the trusting of a parent. So for a lot of people then, and I can't remember I was going with this conversation, but I'll just ramble on, right? Good at rambling. So that's how attachment disorder is formed. So going back to what we were talking about before, which I've forgotten. Can anyone remind me while I've gone off on that tangent? That's why I said I'm Billy Connolly incarnate. I do the same and then I remember where I was and I come back. But that, the whole idea of, emotional dysregulation. So if you've got someone who's constantly not being attended to and they're screaming, crying, then what happens next time is that child will scream and cry. And if mum doesn't come, then they're just going to scream for nothing because they're not getting the attention. So what starts to happen is the emotions get distorted. They get really distorted because the baby doesn't get a response to the cry. So therefore, as they grow up, they try to use the emotions to try and get attention, because that's what they wanted in the first place, and that's a learned behavior then. So if you're role modeling on parents who are unable to parent you or unable to provide the care and love you need, your emotions are going to be quite distorted. So what happens is a lot of the time is when you've been through, a tough childhood, you develop what is in effect is complex PTSD. So a response can sometimes stimulate that reaction. And some people, I didn't know what it was. So sometimes people would say something to me or they would say something hurtful and immediately I'd just go into this emotional reaction. I've never been, how would you say, a violent or aggressive person. I would just push it down, but the reactions were still there. But there's no reason for the reaction to be there. So you still get heightened, your heart starts to beat, your body starts to get warm, and all of a sudden all these emotions are there. And you're like, somebody's only just said to me, questioned my work, for example, and all of a sudden I'm feeling really rattled about this very simple question. And I want to go back. I want to go back at them and I want to say to them, how dare you question my work? And now I stop and I go, okay, I'm feeling this response. Why do I feel this way? What is it about what's just happened that's made me feel so emotionally responsive to it? And then I try to understand by breaking that down, why has that caused that reaction? If somebody's questioned my integrity and I'm an honest person, then actually that seems like the right response. The response isn't wrong, but how I manage that then is by observing it, understanding why I feel that way, and then actually responding in a way that is a much better response. And therefore, the other person doesn't get more angry or upset with me and comes back. So that's what I've been trying to work on, like really understanding how I emotionally respond to things. And sometimes that's really hard because in the moment you want to flare, you want to, to get upset about it. But it all comes back to this: how you're raised, how you are shown by your parents how to manage your responses, why you respond, the over response to things, because you may not have got the attention when you were younger. And then you're angry because someone's treating you poorly, and that's the only response you know or you have. So it's really very interesting. Nobody can always teach you this stuff. You have to work your way through it. And like I was saying, with the past stuff, we've hung on to that. Why would you hang on to that sort of energy? Why would you hang on to those emotional responses? Because that's all you know. And until you start understanding that that isn't helpful to you, you can't work on it either. So you've got to understand, what are these responses you're having? If your response is very different to the one you should have to that situation, then something is not quite right there. So when spirit keeps asking us, that's all part of your ego. It's all part of your self protection mechanism. Those responses, the way we see things, the way we do things, all part of what we've learned. We've been role modeled by parents, families, whoever's been around. We have been role modeled that, and we built a set of responses to it because our emotions have become part of that particular situation. So when things occur in the future, there's no reason for the response. We're probably over-responding, over-emotional. And that's sort of something that we have to be aware of in order to have healthy relationships with people. And I bet every one of you sitting there going, hang on a second, I can understand what Yvonne's saying here. Because sometimes, somebody will come in out of the blue. I mean, for example, here's a really good example. Driving along in your car and the fool in front won't put his indicator on, and the next minute he's slamming his brakes to turn right, or he's looking for a park. And you sit in the car and you feel the blood start to rise and you start to get angry. And if you're anything like me, you probably spawn out a heap of very nasty words because you're angry with that person for the way they behaved. Now, if you stop for a moment and you think about it, why do you react and respond like that? So is it because the person's been disrespectful? Because that's my number one thing. If I feel disrespected, I immediately go into meltdown. I immediately feel those emotions, those emotional flashbacks, because I don't feel like someone's caring about me yet. I think that someone is treating me poorly. They're not respecting that I'm in the car behind them and I'm on the road and I'm doing exactly the same as that. I wouldn't do that to you, so why would you do that to me? You don't respect me. The person in the front's probably never been taught. They probably never have had any guidance there. Maybe they are more narcissistic. Maybe they don't care who else is on the road. Maybe they don't care about you. But that's not my response, is it? I'm not thinking of all those things. And, sometimes people say to me, oh, I just think it's really sad. He's probably had a really bad day. Well, fuck him. Really? Why not think about the person who's behind you? That's where I go. Why? Why would you do that? And then I realize, my reaction is the problem, not what he's doing. I've got myself in an absolute dilemma. I'm sweating. I'm hot. I'm angry. And I don't know what to do with all of that. And it just keeps going round and round. I get home and I'm like still angry about it. And then for the next couple of hours, God help anybody who gets in your way. Someone's not indicated to pull off the road and it's causing me this grief. And I'm probably feeling like that for an hour afterwards. That guy's found his park and he couldn't give two hoots where I am. But I'm still boiling. I'm still thinking about it. So how you going, guys? Soul Pouring and Tammy. So what I'm trying to say is, I guess, that is an unrealistic response to such a small thing that possibly meant nothing to that person whatsoever. And here I am with, several hours of distress and upset and anger and all this stuff that just keeps going round and round in my head. And then my whole day is based in that emotional response. So it's unrealistic. So I started to think about it. Now, driving's just a good example because I'm fantastic now at managing people on the road because of my own response. There you go. Beautiful. Beautifully said, Margie. So she said, I've always thought getting upset about road rage would be a waste of good energy. I've seen some fabulous road rage before. I haven't quite got to that point. I just self-punish. That apparently seems to be my way of managing most things, turning it inwards. But I've seen people turn it outwards. I've seen people dragged out of cars and beaten up and whatever else. So I don't think that's good either. But it's more about understanding your own capacity to manage those emotions. You say things under control. Now see things under control or attempt to. Oh, okay. Yeah, and that's what I said. Some people will say to you, oh, you need to think about the other person. They're probably having a bad day. And no, I don't get that either. I'm like, don't be so righteous. Really. It's not about that at all. This is about you and the way you're managing your emotions. Some people are incredible. They seem to fly through life and never seem to let anything bother them. But do they? Or do they do the same thing? Because people used to say to me all the time, Yvonne, you're so placid. You always seem to have everything under control. I've managed, big numbers of people, and people come to me and say, wow, you are just so incredible. You never look rattled about anything. And I used to stand there and I used to think, I'm like a duck on a pond. The top half of me looks great. I look like I'm managing, but underneath all that are flippers flipping, like I'm going for clappers, trying to work out what I'm going to do in that situation. So what you see is not necessarily what's happening. All of that would get internalized. So I've been working on that. How are you, Susan? Look, I'm sure soul pouring, that a lot of those people cause a lot of accidents. And there's also a lot of people like myself who preempt that, see it, I observe it, and I manage to avoid many accidents during the course of a name calling's my favorite thing too. That's why I said I'd make your hair curl, I think, if you heard me in the car. But at the end of the day, it's something I need to do it better. It's something I really need to do better. Internalizing my anger, internalizing my emotions is not really good. And I mean, other people externalize. They go home and, I don't know, kick the cat, kick the dog, and externalize their emotions. See, blame everybody else. Yeah, I get that too. No responsibility taken. What a great way to go. That's why your hair's super curly. Yes, because as you hear my talking in the car, I used to wonder, because the other day I swore in the car and one of my grandsons said to me, did you just say fuck? And I said, no, you didn't hear that right. I did not say that at all. I was like, okay, so now I have to be really careful that I don't swear, because that's not good role modeling either. Like, I shouldn't be swearing like that, but I just didn't think about it. I was just angry with something somebody'd done. So that's what I'm working on from my past, my emotional flashbacks, my irregular emotional responses to things that I could quite easily just flow over me like, water down a duck's back. And I don't. I put it all inside and bottle it up, and it never goes anywhere. It never goes anywhere. I don't explode very often, and I should. I need to learn how to let it go. So I am now learning how to let it go in a very healthy way. Going off while driving. So my daughter, I've gone out with my daughter in the car, and sometimes, I listen to her and I think I have done huge damage with the whole driving thing, because it was one place I never sort of was able to sort of really recognize why I got angry. And you know what? It's okay to get angry. Angry is not a problem. It's just how you work with that. If you're going to internalize it and let it eat away at you for hours afterwards, that's certainly not healthy. So back to what we picked, because some of you guys weren't here in the beginning. So we picked 2 animal spirit cards, and the first one we got out was the card of the mouse. And the mouse is about control. It's about managing things, managing the details, you know. It's all about control. And then we pulled the bat, and the bat is about allowing things to flow freely. And it was quite interesting to see the polar opposites in the 2 cards, really, again, like we had the other day. So we were talking about how to let go of things and how to flow rather than react in that way. So that's how I got onto the car driving thing. Well, I can remember people yelling at me before when I'd done nothing wrong. So, you know, abusing me, and you're sort of standing and thinking, why are you abusing me? I didn't do anything wrong. So I think driving is one of those things that does seem to aggravate a lot of people. And there are a lot of people who drive really poorly. They don't observe the road rules. Sometimes I think they don't even understand other people are on the road with them. But the relevance is here is how I manage those responses that I have, so that I don't come home and chew and gnaw on that anxiety, anger, frustration, emotion for hours afterwards because of one little tiny thing. So, yeah. So whatever it is for you, definitely Spirit is every day talking about giving away, letting go of the past, letting go of these things. These are all energies that you shouldn't be taking into the future with you. Your way of thinking, your way of doing, some of those things aren't going to help you in the future. So for me, that's mine. For other people I've been speaking to, it's other sorts of energies, like hanging on to your core beliefs, hanging on to who you think you are rather than understanding who you truly are, working on that past energy. And the mouse and the bat was very clear about that. I didn't read an oracle card, though. I might pull a wisdom of the oracle card after that bit of a blurb. That's why I will say to you, you know, I'm on the journey just as much as you are. My awakening is just as obvious as many other people. And so you'd like that one, would you? Very good, whatever you are. It's poised. Isn't that a beautiful card? Card number 48. So we're all learning. We're all learning. We're all on the path of enlightenment. All right, what does this mean? Okay, this is about being ready, bringing something to light, and being at your best and confidence. You can be assured that you are ready for anything right now. You know what you need to. Your skills are sharp. You've come to this place armed with wisdom and knowledge, and you sense a new phase of your life about to begin. Wow, because I'm just talking about closing out cycles. The bat is about a new cycle, right? People respond to your confidence and trust you. This is an auspicious time to begin new things. The prosperity message here says you have every reason to feel confident. Everything you need to make your success concrete is now at your disposal. You can take action knowing you are ready to step into your power, into your light, and into your service to the world. The direction you're moving in is your destiny. Your soul is smiling with joy as you align with the truth. Very beautiful. So you're poised to take whatever's being offered in your direction. And again, that fits really, really nicely with the whole moving into the future and letting go of cycles. That's pretty cool, isn't it? How long have I been on for today? Half an hour. I better go. It's been great talking. I think there were some new people on today that I haven't seen before. So it's been really nice to have you on board. Thank you very much for joining us. I'll try and it probably won't be the same time tomorrow because I'm on my day off tomorrow, so I'll probably go out and see my kids. So hello, Debbie. How are you going? So probably be later in the day tomorrow, although it might be early. No, it'll be later in the day tomorrow. I might try and get on when I come home. You have a great day yourself, soul pouring. And careful with your driving, right? So if you have any experiences today and somebody does something really atrocious on the road, remember what I said. Don't get all up in the air about it. Just stop for a moment and just think, why do I feel this way? What is it about? Oh, thank you. What is it about what's happening? You should do this all the time. This is emotional literacy. This is about having an emotional intelligence. Daniel Goleman wrote a book which I read many years ago on emotional intelligence, and I probably didn't listen to the whole thing, but I did read it. It's about stopping when you feel that emotional reaction just for a second and just stopping and thinking, how am I best poised? That's interesting, to answer this. How do I respond? New Jersey. Nice. Yeah, it's nighttime in some places too. How do I respond? Become aware, but also responsible for your emotions. Just understand that that emotion is something you're dredging up from probably a long time ago. It's just a response. And sometimes that response can get us in all sorts of trouble, especially if we internalize it. It can cause us to overthink, question who we are, question what we're doing. So just stop for a moment, have a think about how you want to respond. And that's why I say to people, just say to the other person who said it, make them wait for a minute while you think about how to respond, and then respond in a way that makes you feel good about your response. Otherwise, you are going to say things perhaps you don't want to say. You're going to probably be emotionally hurt by it. And it is a really, really good way to stop those emotional flashbacks. And just remember that those things you have learned probably from a very young age how to respond to something. Why are you responding that way? Ask yourself that. Is it because the other person's disrespected you, hasn't had, how would you say, hasn't thought about your feelings before they've said it? That doesn't mean you just go back at it. Just stop for a moment, take a breath, and just think about it. Okay. Oh, there you go, Debbie. Yes, it is a big thing, and it does seem to be on a path at the moment. And if you go back and watch the video, I was talking about, the way you respond when you're a child. I mean, if you think about it, not being respected for the way that you're being treated, naturally that would raise emotions for you, and you might respond because of that. But it's not just the response for this particular event. You're responding to stuff that goes back, probably for, years, generations, whatever. But you may have been used to having, if you're in a very good example, if you're in a really abusive relationship, and every time someone, especially if, like some of you, you've had relationships with narcissistic personality people or people who have narcissistic traits, they want to see that rise in you. So they actually work at getting you to respond with emotion. It works for them. They feed off that. They love it. So if you're in got a relationship with somebody in your life that creates the energy, bye, Susan. If you're working with someone who raises the energy, they try to get you to get the energy straight out. So they will say things deliberately to hurt your feelings to get you to respond in that way. That's what they do. It's a very, very clever manipulation technique, because what happens is if you keep making someone stay in that emotional state, that responsive state, they are much easier to control because they're vulnerable. Their emotions are out. Their emotions don't fit with the situation. So therefore, they're much more vulnerable. And that's how people control. It's like brainwashing. So if you're in that situation and someone says something to aggravate you deliberately, stop for a moment and think about what they're saying and come back with something like, that's fantastic. I'll take that on board. I understand what you're saying to me. Thank you for letting me know. Don't respond. And they have to stop doing it. They can't keep doing it. And you take your power back. Okay, there you go, Patricia. I experienced this literally tonight. I waited before responding to a person so I wouldn't be too emotional. Beautiful. Was meant for me to tune in. You feel validated. Oh, perfect. Top of the class. That's perfect. That's exactly what happens. You see, people want that response from you. I mean, me driving in the car, as an example, is my reaction. That's not about me working with other people, but people who actually work to get that response from you, they want that response. So the way you control people, it's all sorts of things to play with people's brains. So if someone says something to hurt you, and we were talking about the other day with the whole, oh, I was only joking thing. No, you weren't. You meant what you said, but I'm not going to respond to you. Thank you very much for telling me. I'll take it on board. Thank you for raising my awareness. Thank you for your feedback. Don't respond, because it is a very clever way of controlling you. So if you're in relationships where people are looking for that emotion, don't play their game. Don't play their game. Play your own game. Take your power back. Anyway, I've got to go. Patricia, thank you. Beautiful example, and perfect for that now. Yes, and soul pouring, I get it too. We've all been at the mercy of someone who's deliberately tried to control us so that we can't go anywhere. Because if you keep doing that to someone, in the end, you don't know what emotions what. And every time you get upset, you bring all of the emotions up. And then you get just this response that's just ridiculous. And you're like, somebody asked me to pass the sugar and I've just lost my cool. Like, it's just not, it doesn't fit with the situation. Don't let people control that. Stop for a moment and think about it. All right, I'm going. I will see you tomorrow, probably a bit later in the day. Thank you very much for joining me. Take care. I've done the same thing. I'm reading people's comments still thinking, wow, I've done the same thing. Yep, few gestures, few swear words made me feel better anyway. Hey, Tammy. All right. Much love to all of you. Mwah.